Welcome back, my friends. I'm so happy to have you here. If you are new here, then welcome. My name is Caitlin, and I'm just going to dive right in because if you haven't listened to the last few episodes, it kind of gives you an update as to what's been going on in my life and how things have been, and really kind of taps into this internal reflection slash hermit energy that I've been going through this last month. And I think everyone has. We are in a 7 month and we're in a 7 year. So needless to say, September has been the energy of really just like needing to dive within. And this isn't going to look the same for everyone, of course. But a lot of internal stuff coming up, internal reflections. So for me, I've shared kind of like what that looks like in the last couple episodes if you're interested. But I want to share a little bit more kind of just personally how that's gone. And we're starting to shift gears here. We're starting to feel differently. We're coming out of this. I will say, we're coming to the end of September. So energetically, things are going to shift, of course. For me, the 7 year. So there's the year that we can look at in numerology, and then there's the month. And September is, I don't know if this is a thing. I have no idea. I'm not a numerologist, but the month and the year are the same for me for personal and universal. So I have a personal month 3 and I have a personal year 3. And this month is 7 and 7 for universally. So universally, it's a 7 month and it's a 7 year. I don't know if this is like a thing, but I feel like it's been extra intense for me. I think because like the energy's amplified, and I'm a 2/4 in human design. So like the need to hermit and reflect has just been like huge, in the sense that like for me, it's coming in with expression. So like 3 is like self-expression, communication, and like relation, like working, like being able to express yourself so you can attract what you want, right? Like it's like resources. And so it's been interesting to have these deep revelations and then this desire or need really to express it and to communicate it so I can make the changes that I need to make. And it's like relentless. I can't go another day without making this change, like when things come up. And so it's been very interesting. And I don't even know the words that I want to use to describe it, but depth, like the depth almost has just been intense. And it really started around my birthday. So my birthday is the end of August, like very beginning of Virgo season. And I will say, it's now Libra season, recording this in Libra season. And I felt the shift there, but it was almost like the Virgo was like, here's all the things that aren't like feeling good for you. And it's really affecting your energy. And it might be things that like when you think about what you need to do today, it's way down on the list. It's like not important. But these are things that are like literally clogging your whole energy body up. And so as I started, it like you think about Virgo, like aesthetic energy, like I guess like Libra too, like the aesthetics, but it was very like where things were. It was about clutter in my house. It was like how I'm sitting. And it was just like get your life put together type of energy. Even though like before that, I felt like my life was pretty solid. And so it can feel very chaotic almost when you like are open and like you step into this energy of like, what's available to me. And I'll say this month after turning 35, it's very similar to like a dark night of the soul. And it probably is one, honestly. Like I don't like to label like things, especially when they're still in the process. But yeah, so for those who aren't familiar, as you awaken and you become more conscious, right? There's that you have multiple awakenings throughout your life. Like, it's not like you wake up and you're just like, oh, I'm awake now. Like, there's multiple awakenings, and I would say like there's different like seasons and different layers that you have to go through to wake up. And my first awakening, I want to say, was very dark. It kind of was like packaged with what one would say is a dark night of the soul. And then working through that, whatever, I had like what would say like another awakening kind of that was very light, and it was just like, oh, I'm multidimensional, I'm limitless. I see the light, I see the dark, but I see how it works together. It's very like it's so funny because like in foster care, there's like this honeymoon phase. Wow, I couldn't think of the term. A honeymoon phase. And it's kind of like where everything seems like rainbows and butterflies, you know? And there's that with awakenings for sure. And it's great, right? Like, we need that euphoric kind of connectedness and need to know like, oh, well, there's more out there. There's also the dark night of the soul where we kind of have to go in the depths and see the darkness and know that like the darkness is us too. And like we are like, that's what we need to harness as well in order to see the light. And so anyway, I feel like this past month I've been going through a dark night of the soul. And as I'm coming out of it, as I was in it, I was like, this is heavy. And I've said that a lot because it does feel like I've been walking around with like a weighted blanket. Like, that's what it feels like. And I'm just like slowly like taking like fibers off this blanket to feel lighter. But I am waking up to like a new identity. It is sitting with these like this discomfort of like, why am I living my life this way? And I know that seems so like I know that seems very like heavy, like big, but it to deliver the message, that's a very general thing. But like it came in pieces. Like, why don't you do laundry this way? Or why don't you ask for help with this? And it's not, and it wasn't like, okay, I will say, being lower vibrational, a lot of these things can come in as being like judgmental, like why aren't you doing that? Why do you care about that? Why did you respond that way? You know, like it can be a very judgmental voice, or you can still have that playful like interaction with it. Like, I don't know, why am I doing that? Like, show me a better way. You know, I get really sassy with my guides and just, and it's my set, like, right, me. And so like, I find the gift in being pointed out where like that I'm now going to feel uncomfortable because there's a different way to do this. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but you need to explore it. And I'm like the can't say it either. I'm the perspective queen. Like I just have to step into this different perspective to see if I like it better. And if I don't, then I let it go. And if I do, then cool. Like, I'll put it on. But that's where a lot of the communication has had to come up for me, because I'll go to bed, or I'll do some meditating, or I'll work out or yoga, whatever, wherever I'm connecting with myself. And I will wake up and I will say, Amy, my wife, this is what we're going to do now. And, you know, it's been fun. This has been interesting, but being able to inform and like share like, okay, why am I changing things, has been helpful. But at the same time, it's like I just have to trust that trying things differently and trying to do things in a new way is what's needed right now. For the first, I will say, for the first 3 weeks of whatever the heck this feeling was, and don't get me wrong, it hasn't been like the same feeling all like this whole time. But there's been, listen to my past 2 episodes, there's been this general like kind of like something's not right. And so the first bit, it was a lot of like, you just need to be you gotta like clear the clutter. So it was a lot of clearing physical things, but it was clearing the clutter in my mind. I did a lot of kind of like detoxing from my body as well. Like one, it was unintentional a couple times. And then two, it was very intentional because, you know, I was guided to just not consume a couple things. So anyway, there's been very just kind of like heavy life question things that a lot of times throw people off. And it's like it's either going to throw you off or you're going to look into it and you're like, no, I'm not going to deal with that right now. And that's how we find ourselves stuck in these situations, like whether it's a relationship or a job or a house or a friend, like whatever. And we're like, wait, why are we still doing this? Because we had the sign at one point, we had the idea, the message, whatever, to change things up, and we didn't listen. So I've lived that way a long time, and I just decided at one point that like if I get the least bit of a hint that things need to be changed, like I'm going to pay attention. And more times than not, I'm changing things up just to see like, okay, is this what needs to be changed? Is this what we're moving? And that's like my number one intuition tip, by the way. Like I feel like I'm going to say this all the time. I do say this all the time. Something doesn't feel right, change something. It might have nothing to do with that, but like just start like changing something and you'll know. And then that's when you pay attention. And it might not be that thing. So then you change that back. But you're paying attention. So you're led to the thing that needs to be changed. Okay. There's like little breadcrumbs for all of us. So I've been following the breadcrumbs this last month, and there's just lots of changes for my identity, my environment, and we're still clearing. There's still some unknowns, but we're loving it. And what's exciting is there are some things that like I can't help but to know, like this is where my attention's needed. As much as there's all this unknown going on around me, I've been very clear and like directed as to where to put my energy. So it's been fun. Like I've been cleaning things out and clearing up clutter. We have so much stuff in this house. Like I kind of like see, this is where the new identity is coming in, because there's this a little bit of disgust of like, how did I get myself in this situation? But see, my new identity doesn't have disgust for herself. So we're just kind of taking it day by day and saying like, this is what we're starting with, and this is the goal. And my new identity is carrying us to this goal. And so it feels really good. Like I said, coming to the end of September, I'm feeling this kind of like veil, this kind of my blanket, right? My weighted blanket. She's getting lighter, and I'm excited. We're moving into a collective 8 months, and it's abundance. And I feel like, you know, a lot of this haziness and this not seeing things clearly, and like really forcing myself to get really clear on what it is I'm doing, what I want around me, who I want in my environment, what I want in my environment, how I want to be spending my time. Like I need all of that so I can feel abundant AF. And like it's setting me up for that, right? Like the energy's there. So we're feeling good as far as movement. I feel the energy moving. I hope you all do too. And I just wanted to share that because this really comes along with accepting and knowing that you're exactly where you need to be. Like I could have resisted all month that I didn't feel how I felt a month ago, right? Like I didn't feel my highest vibe all the time. I'm not meant to by any means. But for me, like what it felt like was, and it still does, that's the thing. But it's getting lighter, it's getting easier, but it really feels like a constant, like almost like when you have like your bag on your shoulder and it keeps falling, it's like that constant, like, I gotta reground. I gotta think about what frequency, like, what is my frequency? I gotta ground myself because I need to choose my frequency again. And it was like almost like that constant, like, I'm so glad, like I have these tools. But it just felt like, come on, we're gonna get through this. Use the tools that use what you know, right? But it energetically, it took a lot. And it was a hermit month. So I wasn't doing, like, I didn't feel like doing as much. I wasn't doing all the things that I normally do necessarily, like socially. And that, like, some of that was planned and some of that I had nothing to do with, like other people would cancel. And so, or rearrange their schedules, whatever. And so the hermiting, like the reflection, like it was all supportive for me to have this need to like need more me time, need more energy work, need more frequency work, right? And it, of course, like there was days I couldn't, like I didn't have the energy, and I just wanted to like let go. I need to feel the lowest low that I need to feel, and I would cancel, like I would rearrange my schedule too. So it was very like honor your needs, honor your needs, honor your needs. And so there was a ton of grounding, a ton of energy work and support. But honestly, like there was about a week, was it a week, where I felt the most human I have felt in a long, long time. And there was no meditating, there was no cards, there was very, very little energy work. And I used this like description when this first came on. I was like, okay, I was really in the clouds, clearly. As much as I ground all the time, I live a lot of time in the clouds. And I felt like I had just like fallen to the ground, but like was hit by all this stuff on the way down. And so whatever, right? Falling to the ground, had to find myself. And then now it's kind of like, okay, I'm grounded. Like I'm so human, I don't even want to be in the clouds. And so like I kind of had this whole process of like falling from the clouds, being really hurt by it, like kind of like butt hurt. and then like, okay, well, I can do this. Like I can be on the ground, but there's challenges with that, and really like finding home on the ground again, and remembering like, oh wait, this is what I'm here for. And so as you can imagine, like all of that, right, like energetically, at the same time it's like, oh, I'm down here on the ground, like what's all this stuff, like what is all this stuff? And that's where a lot of the shock was for me. I was like, wait, why am I doing this way? Why am I not asking help for this or with this? And like it was just like, oh, like I'm down from my life in the clouds now, so I can see what's not working down here. And it was a matter of like, and it still is a matter of like clearing everything off so I can stand on 2 feet. And it's been interesting because to have all that happen and be intuitive, it was like going back into a womb. It was just like, let me crawl back in and I'm going to come out a new person. And that's exactly what it is, right? Like this is a rebirth. This is a rebirth, but it's very spiritual, to say the least. So I hope that's helpful just to describe like some of the feelings that we can go through and know like there is a purpose, right? There's a purpose to have this deep curiosity and lingering unknown to wonder like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this how I want my house set up? Is this how I want to show up to my relationships? Is this how I want to parent? And it's so beautiful when you're in that spot, like that void, that kind of like, oh my God, everything is everything and anything could be anything. It's so beautiful in my mind because it's like it could feel so dark and dense, but what's actually happening is like this moment of like, look at everything that you have held up, and you're going to keep going. So is this really what you're wanting to hold up? Or you want to get something else? And it's kind of like that. Are your priorities really where you want your priorities? And is this really like this magic ball that you've been creating? Is this what you want in the ball? Is this how you want it to look? Like, I don't know how else to describe that, but there's this moment where you're just like, okay, like I've done all the reflection, and you can get really overwhelmed of like, what am I supposed to do? How do I get rid of this? How do I do this? How do I do that? What comes next? What do I do first? Like, right? Like, do the best you can to ask all those questions and say, that doesn't matter. If you have to write them down and throw them away and burn them, whatever, just say, that does not matter. What matters is that I am here right now. Like, I spent a lot of time not in the present moment. But the power of coming back to the present moment after a dark night of the soul, after the fears and the lower vibes, like right, like feel all the lower feels, but where does that take you? Because I know the feelings are taking you somewhere, whether that's the past or the future. And so it was a matter of like taking all of that wisdom and knowledge of feeling what I needed to feel and bringing it to the present moment. It's not leaving it there. I'm bringing it to the present moment. And that's where this feeling of like trust and confidence can come in. And that's literally why I'm recording this episode, because at some point this last week, I was just like, I can sit here and think about what I need to do, what I want to do, what my next steps are, or I can get on and I can talk about how this is not like perfect, right? I don't know what I'm doing. My house is a literal mess right now because I'm on this thing that I need to literally go through everything in our house, and if it doesn't bring me joy, I'm getting rid of it. And it's a lot of stuff to get rid of, I will say that. So it's just like things can be appear one way, and I can show up as who I want to be. And that takes trust and confidence. And that takes this belief that like, I can either sit here and wonder, or I can go try it and know. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, I just have to try some things. And both of those are valid. Both of those are needed, right? Like sometimes we need to sit in the wonder. And then there comes a point where that doesn't serve us anymore. And we need to go do the things to know if what we just wondered is true for us or not. And nobody else can tell you. Okay. No, I don't know. That was a little off track, I feel like, but who knows? Everybody needed to hear that, whoever's listening. So I'm really looking forward to October and just the shift in energy. It's not because I'm like done doing this. I feel like I just am excited to invite in new energy. I'm constantly like waking up with, what do you have for me today, universe? It's a fun question to ask, because if you're feeling stuck, like ask for something different. Do something different. Okay, that's enough of that. I feel like I had to touch on that, and the rest of the episode is going to be about something that may or may not feel totally connected for you, but for me it is. So I wanted to share how I've learned about these specific type of relationships that we may or may not get to experience, and you may or may not be conscious of it too. But I want to share about these relationships because they played a huge role in my life, and in reflection, I've really seen how they have been mirrors for me and brought up things that I needed to see and feel within myself to help me heal. And I think this is a good time just because of this last month. These relationships have come to the surface for me, and just like really connecting the pieces. So I want to share about what I call soul imprint relationships. I honestly, this name came to me when I was talking to my guides. So I don't know. There might be something else out there called that, and it's not this, but that's the name that I have for these. And we're going to talk about it. And I just want to share with you because you might have a similar experience, or you might be thinking something about a relationship as I'm sharing about this, and just have an open mind, be curious, and of course, take what resonates and leave what doesn't, because this is based off of my experience and talking to some of my close friends and some of my longer term clients. But I call them soul imprint relationships because they, for me, like when I was talking to my guides about these specific relationships, it's so interesting because I'm not one who really like thrives with labels. I'm just like, what's the energy? Like, what is this, you know? And but I really was like identifying these relationships that felt different in a way where I'm like, I feel like that person is like a messenger, but that like I was expecting. And I knew them, like I know them. So of course they're gonna be like soul fam, right? Like soul family, or somebody from your soul's past, or like your soul, not past, but your soul knowing. And they might be somebody you have a contract with. They might have a karmic contract with you as well. So a soul imprint relationship could also be a karmic relationship, just so you know. And you would know, like, before we incarnate, we choose if we are going to experience these specific type of like dynamics, and we know that like what we chose them to come into our life for. And usually the other soul, like it's an exchange. So the other soul has an imprint on us that we are now gifting to them. So essentially, these soul imprint relationships are people who are here to reflect and like help us. It might not be conscious, it usually isn't consciously, but it's going to there to help us like reveal and heal a wound from our soul. So this is like Akashic records in relationships. Okay. And it takes a soul coming into you. So generally we have like in these contracts, we have this idea of like when they will come, but it's not like obviously a time in your life. It's more like a time in your healing journey, a time with your lessons and your mission. Like I feel like they're more connected with like your mission than necessarily like, oh, well, this is the wound you need to heal to get to your mission. I mean, it could go both ways, but it's very like you'll feel the connection more towards your mission rather than like a specific wound, except that they might be illuminating a wound for you, right? Because we're all connected and we're all mirrors for each other. Usually this is someone that you lived with in past lives, and it's a significant soul lesson. So it's hard to tell like if something is a significant soul lesson unless you're doing some multidimensional work, or maybe you're doing Akashic records and it's like a lesson that has been threaded through multiple lifetimes. Those are the lessons that you may see these soul imprint relationships pop up. So yeah, that's like a minor tip. Like you may or may not know if it's like a significant soul lesson. But it could have been like the end of another life or a life-changing event in another life that made this like emotional energetic source for you. And this is all wounds that we can see like that come up from past lives, right? Like it's because of the energetic emotional connection that then it carries on in this life, and really changing the emotions around that and choosing different patterns and beliefs around that is what heals that. So for example, the wounds that, you know, I mean, I have lots that have come up over the last however many lifetimes I've had, but one of my big ones is like this like fear of not it's like, see, this is deep stuff, but this fear of like not being trusted, like credited, like not even credited, but this fear of like not being taken seriously, like come on, you know, like I'm serious. This fear of like not being credible, right, for my work. And that might be a fear so many people have, like that fear of not being enough, or like that fear of like imposter syndrome, right? Now, what was interesting to me is like, according to my human design, you know, like of course we all have all the energies and we can all play with all the energies, but imposter syndrome isn't something that necessarily like is highlighted in my chart based off of like main things. Okay, so side note that. But so I was like, okay, where's this coming from? Like I was really trying to like pinpoint. And I do that a lot with human design. Like I'll think of like a limiting belief or just kind of like something that triggers me, and I'll think like in my chart, like, okay, what's kind of playing with that, and how can I transcend that? Nothing was really coming up for me in regards to this like fear of like not being like taken seriously. And then I did some past life regression and did some Akashic record readings, and you know, of course there are past lifetimes that are directly correlated with that kind of fear and that emotion of like being shut down. And so turns out I have a past life where they basically brought me in front of a council and they questioned my ethics and like they questioned my work, and really I could just like feel the doubt. And what came from that was like defeat. I felt defeated. I felt like I can't do what I want to do because nobody believes that it's real. Like the work that I was doing in this life, it was healing. I was healing people. And so this like ethics committee, it wasn't back then, but it was really just kind of like checking my work. And I took that so personally. And I feel that so deeply in my soul now. I'm just like, oh yeah, like nothing's happened this life, really. I mean, of course there's like little things that like I can tell now take me back to this lifetime where I was put in from this council and like basically torn apart when they weren't really like, there was nothing, I wasn't doing anything wrong, right? But it was just a matter of being questioned. So thinking about that now in this life, when I feel challenged or when I feel like people are overly curious, they're not really curious, right? They're trying to challenge me and catch me and like whatever, I get so triggered and I shut down. I either shut down or I get super defensive. And that's been something I'm like, why am I like that? And I had to like peel back the layers, right? So that would be something that's like a big soul lesson. It's like, how can I have confidence in my work even when people don't believe me? Even like I don't have to prove myself. Like there's this big lesson of like, who are you trying to prove, you know? And so that, to me, that might not feel big to you, but to me, I can tell like that's a big thing that I am working through in order to be seen, to be fully seen. I have to trust that the right people are gonna get my stuff, right? And I have to trust that even if people question me, that doesn't take away from my worth. So there's this big lesson that I have had soul imprint relationships come in to help me see that wound and to help me see different ways of living in that perspective, and to help me see ways of shifting that perspective. So this could all come from the same relationship, the same person. It could come from different. But the soul imprint relationships, I say imprint, it's because I have left something. I have made an imprint on another soul to later come back and bring it to me. And what this does, it unlocks a remembering of, I've lived this lesson before. Do I want to do the same thing? Or do I want to try something different and either heal from this, grow from, like, heal and grow, right? And I've had multiple situations like this. So the example I just shared is one example. And I've had another one that literally blew my life apart, honestly. Like, when I remembered when I had this reading and the memories just came back, I was like, oh. And I was a person that chose anger. And it was so triggering for me to learn about this because or just like remember it, because I had been sitting in a lot of anger lately. And I was like, oh, like connecting the dots, right? And so this soul imprint relationship that I have, it was like a relationship that I really resisted. I wanted to push this person away. I thought of every excuse to not have this person in my life. I thought of ways to not have this person in my life and still have what I did want. And it was like desperate, like avoidance. It was intense. And that's another thing I will say is, like, oftentimes these soul imprint relationships, if you're not ready to heal that part, then like you will want to run far away from that person. And you got to get curious about that, like, why, right? And I'm not going to share this, like, details about this relationship because I just don't want to, for the sake of that person. And yeah, I can share without too much details, but it wasn't somebody I could just run from. And I had to honor, my desires, but I also had to honor that, those desires came with some fears. And these fears didn't make sense to anyone else in my life because these fears were coming from a past life. And I had left this imprint for this soul to come into my life to tell me, like, hey, remember this life we had? And this is what you chose. And this is how it played out. You can choose that again. We can choose that again. Or we can choose something different. And mind you, this soul has no idea that this is the message that they brought me. They may or may not, okay? More times than not, they won't have any clue, right? It's kind of like the twin flame thing. It's like they may or may not, like, more times than not, both twins don't know that they're twin flames. Unless you tell them. But that person really has no idea that, and maybe their soul knows, right? And so essentially you can have like these different contracts, but a lot of times they are to unite each other enough to get that imprint. And then it just depends on the contract, if like you're meant to like carry on a relationship or a connection, a union, whatever. And these could be soulmates, this could be like your best friend, this could be your teacher, this could be somebody you ran into at the coffee shop, this could be a child, this could be anyone, right? So as you can tell, like, it could be somebody you just had this profound moment with for an hour or even 10 minutes. Or it's somebody who, you commit to a long-term relationship with, you birth, they birth you, whatever. There's so many, ways this could play out. But the energy is like that knowing, and that just like, I've been here before. Now, my first connection with this, like I didn't make the connection myself necessarily. I had help, right? Like I don't do past life regression readings. I don't do Akashic record readings. So I have help all the time, like guiding me to the depths of my subconscious, but what I couldn't ignore was that, like, the familiar, like, it's like, okay, I'm avoiding this person because I know something. I might not know right now, but I know that there's something. And and of course, it might not be, if it's your spouse and you have fallen in love with them, obviously there's not that avoidance type of energy, but it's almost like if you're around somebody who is your soul imprint, who has a soul imprint from you, and you're not like awake to it, you still get it. Okay. Like your soul still receives it. Now, the whole point of it is so your human self can receive it as well. So if that person comes into your life and your human self is not ready to receive that yet, one, they might leave and come back into your life later. But they also like might be there. They might just be there. And then you remember, well, you don't remember, but then when you have this imprint transferred, then there's this like deep reverence for that relationship. It's like there's no other relationship ever like it. And it could be that guy in the coffee shop, right? But like when you have that moment of like, oh, you brought me to something I need to remember. On a soul level, it is like divine connection to your multidimensionality. It's like you sent yourself a message through another person. How cool is that? And because that person showed up for you, it's a reflection of you showing up for yourself. It's a reflection of the universe showing up for you, God showing up for you, right? There's just so much like gratitude for this relationship and this human in yourself. But the soul imprints, it's so magical. And when you can really identify like, oh, this is something that I sent myself, you don't have to question it either. Like if you have like this thought of like, oh, did I just send myself this message through another soul, my past self, right? This is the thing. Your soul sends you messages through people all the time. This soul imprint relationship is very specific. It's very like related to your mission, of course. Like my example, if I am afraid of being challenged, I am never going to put myself in a position to be seen. My mission requires me to be seen. So I have to get through like kind of that fear of like being challenged. And I couldn't get through that fear of being challenged. I mean, I could have. There's so many ways to get through fears, right? Or to live with fear. But my soul self sent this human to me with a message that I crafted, and it was delivered in the most divine way. Honestly, my human self was like, this is a little annoying and I don't like this, but it's like, you just can't take the magic away from that. Like you can't erase the magic from when like you have that moment of like, wow, this person, we have this connection because like we've shared a life together, one, but we've also had this commitment to like reunite and give each other what we need in that moment. I hope that makes sense. I don't know. I found it so interesting. I had my first soul imprint relationship. I mean, I guess I don't know when my first one was because it could probably was when I was a kid or, but the first one, oh shoot. I see, okay, I said that and now I'm like, I gotta think about this because I would say the first person that had that like soul imprint relationship dynamic would be in the 3rd grade, is like what I remember. And there might have been something before that, but I remember someone specifically in the 3rd grade. And wow, I'm getting a lot of messages right now. They're like, don't go back to 3rd grade right now. But they can come at any point in your life, and I've had some really significant ones, and my most recent one is honestly, one day I will share who this is. But I feel like I'm just having a hard time with my words right now. There's like a lot of messages coming in around this, so I guess there's probably going to be another episode on this, but I just feel the depth of magic and gratitude and multidimensionality and this ability to like you can send yourself messages, and like you can do this right now, right? Like you can send yourself a message to any version of you, to any lifetime of you, and we can do this to our future self too, right? Like our future human self, because she exists. And so it's like trust. It goes back to like the trust, right? Like I can't trust somebody else to bring me a message that my soul needs to bring me if I don't trust my damn self, and if I don't believe in myself. And so like just opening up, this really, I have learned about all different kinds of relationships and learning about like the twin flame dynamic. I love that dynamic. I really enjoy how Christina Rice, or Christina the Channel, explains the twin flame dynamic, and that really just got me curious. I've had I don't think a twin flame, but like I've been in that template where like I've had that experience. But it really just opened me up to like different types of relationships and contracts that we have made as souls, and how that shows up in our human experience. And when I just kind of opened up and got curious, it just I manifested multiple relationships around that time, and it was really triggering because, like I said, there were some people that I was just like, I think I like this person, but why do I feel like I need to avoid them? And there was like these conflicting feelings, like the duality, right? And so I couldn't help but have like just to pay attention. And then I talk to my guides all the time, so I ask them questions, and eventually we opened the door to what these relationships mean, because I basically called them out and was like, okay, this person is different in my life, and this person's different, and this person back then was different. Like, why are these people here? Because it almost feels like a shock. Like you're going about your life and you feel real good about your relationships, and like this new relationship comes in, and it's like, oh, this is a version of me I don't know. Like I feel so different, and I feel like just like a part of me was hiding, and now that that person's there, like this other part of me is out, but like learning how to ground myself in that version. That's why I found this all fitting to share kind of in the month of September, after I've shared about being kind of in the hermit phase and feeling stuck and really just questioning a lot of things, because I feel like when you do a lot of healing and past life work and you are intentional, like there's things you can't ignore, and there's things that like it's like you're just like, this is how it is now, and you just decide. And I've talked so much about this lately, but there's been so many things where I'm like, I'm just going to decide that this is how it is now, and that's very triggering for people, but I love doing that, especially when it's aligned, because when it's aligned, it's not that things aren't hard, right? Like things can feel hard or resistant or tough, but like there's this just kind of like ease, this harmony when you just know like, well, this is how we're doing things now. So that comes with just being really honest and open. And I will tell you that this last soul imprint relationship that I identified would not have been identified if I didn't be really honest and clear about some of the feelings I was having, which, you know, yeah, I'm not going to say too much more because like I really don't want to disclose the identity of this person just because of privacy, and like, you know, I don't go around saying, hey, you just delivered me a message from my soul. So anyway, I hope you find that interesting. And just back with my shenanigans of sharing my spiritual adventures, probably. But in all honesty, I hope everyone is feeling good. We're wrapping up the end of September and Libra season's here. I love a change in energy. So, you know, we're moving on up, moving on forward. Anyway, I think that's all I have for you today. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please don't hesitate to take a screenshot and share on social media. You can tag me at the Intuition Playground on Instagram and TikTok. That's fun. And also, if you want, you can leave us a review and rating over on iTunes. That is so helpful for the show to just get it more accessible for people so people can hear our conversations and magic that we are sharing. All right. I'll talk to you all next time on the Intuition Playground.